In response to the Urantia Book, there appears to be a lot of misperceptions as to the nature of evil on our planet. Now, don't get me wrong. Evil has reigned on our planet for a very long time, and most certainly was more prevalent previous to our Jesus Christ Michael bestowal, which facilitated both the outpouring of the Spirit of Truth and everyone's eligibility to receive a thought adjuster, which directly insulates us from many evil influences that are remnant on our planet. Previous to this happening, things were a little different on our world. Evil reigned on Urantia for hundreds of thousands of years due to two major missteps on our planet. The first was the eventual default of our planetary prince, Caligastia, who was best representative of the personification of the devil when he decided to default with his brothers, Lucifer and Satan. The second default happened with our material sons Adam and Eve, who attempted not to eat a forbidden fruit, but to rather establish one when Eve decided to have intimate relations with Caino, who was the true father of Cain, as a blasphemous attempt to unnaturally expedite the advancement of the human race. As a brief description of this unsanctioned upgrade, the Urantia Book indicates that Abel, who is described as being more primitive with aspects of intelligence and spirituality when compared to Cain, being of pre-Adamic stock, had special, almost superhuman endowments stemming from the planetary prince's corporeal staff. So in other words, Adam and Eve attempted to cheat and expedite the natural evolutionary system. And it was not so much a sacrifice that led Cain towards killing his brother Abel, but for the reality that most days, Abel would remind Cain that Adam was not his true father, and that he was most certainly not a part of the divine plan, located in 76 2.5. These two constructs of her then defunct planetary prince and material sons are vitally important to understand concerning the influence of the Caligastia, Lucifer, and Satan trio, since they were supposed to be, in many ways, our spiritual ambassadors to the kingdom, along with the material son's role of advancing our material genetic stock. Fun fact, Adam and Eve were both material and divine, and could actually perceive and communicate with our once planetary prince, who was in spirit form. In addition, our material sons had advanced knowledge of every species of creature on our planet due to their extensive previous training that led to them eventually volunteering for their planetary assignment. However, these divine plans were never completely followed. And of course, these planetary defaults set our planet back spiritually and evolutionary further behind planets that had not participated in various forms of rebellion. This rebellion was named the Lucifer Rebellion, titled by the individual who led the uprising against God and their creator father, Jesus Christ Michael, along with his consort, our universe mother spirit. Yes, for those of you that wish to get biblical, Michael most certainly did defeat Satan. And yes, if Gabriel is the bright and morning star of Nebadon, which is of course our local universe, and is in fact an angel, then of course the Bible would be accurate in assuming his father, Michael, is a form of angel as well. This defeat is mentioned in Revelation 12, 7-10, which indicates,
Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought, but they were defeated, and there were no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him.
For many, this quote can be confusing at best, since it does not fully differentiate whether the snake or dragon is one entity, or constitutes the entire rebellion or the war in heaven. For those of you following differing translations of the Bible, I'll briefly show you the differentiations of just 12:7 to show you how differing translations can have significant discrepancies that should not be ignored. All right, I'll put it on the screen right now for everybody. And no, I'm not going to read each one. The Urantia Book claims to greatly clarify this confusion with only nominal distortions associated between British versus American English variations that were used by its celestial authors. This means its authors meant for the text to simply be read in English with nominal discrepancies made, unlike those errors made and mistranslations found in other religious texts. Please remember, the more popular versions of the Holy Bible do not necessarily indicate it is the most accurate version of the text. When it comes to the Urantia Book, it makes the Lucifer Rebellion crystal clear that it originated with one person named Lucifer, who was a primary Lenendadek son of our simple and small universe. That's right. Out of the 700,000 local universes in our master universe, we are only talking about one small localized rebellion, and most certainly did not constitute a war in heaven. Not to mention that only 37, I repeat, 37 of our 607 local inhabited worlds in Satania were affected during this very small uprising in proportion against the massive size of the master universe. Like the Bible portrays, Lucifer was a very capable system sovereign. That according to 53.2.5, that
there must have been a pride of self that nourished itself to the point of self-deception. So that Lucifer, for a time, really persuaded himself that his contemplation of rebellion was actually for the good of the system, if not of the universe.
It's also important to highlight that this manifesto was not the workings of a madman per se. After all, if that was the case, Lucifer would have no one to follow him. He was smart, charismatic, and simply fed off the fears of those who were already lost in their faith. The Lucifer Manifesto contained the following points. Number 1, Lucifer questioned the very reality of the Universal Father. After all, he and most of his associates had never actually seen the Universal Father, which led to point 2, that such a fabrication was meant to control the masses by the Creator-Son governments. Fun fact, ironically, Lucifer did acknowledge his sonship to Christ Michael as being his creator father, but still rejected his grandfather. Thirdly, Lucifer did not fully understand the point and purpose of the mortal ascension plan, thinking that it was a massive waste of resources and time. Consequently, Lucifer petitioned for more localized autonomy of planets and, of course, their systems. Satan, who was Lucifer's first lieutenant, was also a Lenendadek son, but never a system sovereign. He was Lucifer's first lieutenant and during the rebellion acted as Lucifer's spokesperson and emissary, including on Urantia, playing a key role in spreading the rebellion's ideology, especially during his visits to planets like on Urantia, where he corrupted our very own planetary prince. Satan also participated in the attempted sabotage of Jesus' bestowal mission on Earth, alongside Lucifer and Caligostia. Satan's name was popular simply due to majorly being the face of the rebellion itself, but not its mastermind. Caligostia was our former planetary prince of Urantia, who became corrupted, who was a secondary Lenendadek son. Being quite frank, there was nothing really abnormal about Caligostia in the beginning of his assignment on our planet. For thousands of years, he did execute the divine plan according to the will of his father. However, the one abnormality can be found in 66.1.3 that states that
Caligostia very early sought a commission as planetary prince, but repeatedly, when his request came up for approval in the constellation councils, it would fail to receive the assent of the constellation fathers. Caligostia seemed especially desirous of being sent as planetary ruler to a decimal or life modification world.
we know in 45.18 that every 10th world is a decimal planet that creates life anew, with many other projects created on such worlds, such as our own, carried over to planets via the life carriers. And 49.5.11, we learn
experimental worlds are usually ideally adapted to the typical life forms. And on these decimal planets, life carriers attempt to produce beneficial variations in the standard life designs. Since your world is an experimental planet, it differs markedly from its sister spheres in Satania. Many forms of life have appeared on Urantia that are not found elsewhere. Likewise, are many common species absent from your planet.
Unfortunately, after about 300,000 years of loyal service, Caligostia joined Lucifer and Satan in the rebellion, betraying his sacred trust as Urantia's spiritual leader, found in 67.1.1. We learn in 66.1.1 that Kalagastya was also a Lenendek son, number 9344 of the secondary order. In 66.4.12, we learn that originally when the secondary son arrived to our planet, he did not arrive by himself. Known as the Kalagastya 100, his corporeal staff were personally immortal, or undying. This immortality was granted due to their partial divine heritage in consuming the fruit of the tree of life that absorbed cosmic energies that sustained them. In 66.4.13, we gain more insight into the tree of life when it states,
These anecdotal complements of the Satania life currents were derived from the fruit of the tree of life, a shrub of Urantia, which was sent to Urantia by the Most Highs of Naraldadek at the time of Kalagastya's arrival.
Hence the origins of superhuman self-proclaimed small g gods we find in mythical storytelling. Eventually known as the devil in the Urantia Book, Kalagastya's betrayal led to our planetary quarantine, isolating Urantia from celestial circuits. During such a planetary rebellion, there was a resistance that occurred on our planet. In 67.3.6, the book indicates that
throughout these 7 crucial years of the Kalagastya rebellion, Van was wholly devoted to the work of ministry to his loyal army of men, midwayers, and angels.
Loyalist Van and his human associate Amadon were the heroes of the story, majorly saving the rest of Urantia from the influence of her fallen prince and his followers. This dejected one-time prince is still free on Urantia, but is powerless to influence human minds unless invited to do so. His influence is largely symbolic and psychological, found in 53.8.6, when it states,
He has absolutely no power to enter the minds of men. Neither can he draw near to their souls to tempt or corrupt them unless they really desire to be cursed with his wicked presence.
The matter surrounding the 3 rebel leaders being adjudicated was finally settled in 25 AD, when Jesus ascended Mount Hermon to settle the rebellion once and for all. In 134.8.7, it indicates,
To the many proposals and counter-proposals of the emissaries of Lucifer, Jesus only made reply, May the will of my paradise Father prevail, and you, my rebellious son, may the ancients of days judge you divinely. I am your creator Father. I can hardly judge you justly, and by mercy you have already spurned. I commit you to the adjudication of the judges of a greater universe.
this decision, through its execution, finally resolved what was to be done with their Lucifer rebels and became official upon Jesus' later baptism with John the Baptist. It was the mountain adjudication which best represented the temptations of Satan, and not Jesus' time in the desert. Currently, Lucifer and Satan are both detained on a prison world. As per the nature of this prison world, which is not hell, by the way, it states in 45.1.11,
As a sojourner on the 7th mansion world, you have access to the 7th transition world, the sphere of the Universal Father, and are also permitted to visit the Satania prison worlds surrounding this planet, whereon are now confined Lucifer and the majority of the personalities who followed him in rebellion against Michael. And this sad spectacle has been observable during these recent ages and will continue to serve as a solemn warning to all of Nebadon until the Ancients of Days shall adjudicate the sin of Lucifer and his fallen associates who rejected the salvation proffered by Michael, their universe father.
As for Kalagastya, who still roams our planet, it states in 53.8.1,
Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast down. And then still nearer the completion of his life work, he announced, The prince of this world is judged. And it is the same dethroned and discredited prince who has once been termed God of Urantia.
God in the notion that during our future era of light and life, Kalagastya's title would have changed from prince to sovereign, with many of the privileges and autonomy that drove Kalagastya to rebel in the first place. Consequently, portraying themselves much like a god on our own planet. Quite a scary prospect indeed, given the eventual outcome that we all know. In fact, the Urantia Book gives us several answers as to why the Lenendek order is allowed to default in the first place, located in 35.8.15, when it states,
Since Lenendecks are a somewhat lower order of sonship than the Melchizedeks and the Verendadeks, they are given greater service in the subordinate units of the universe, for they are capable of drawing nearer the lower creatures of the intelligent races. They also stand in greater danger of going astray, of departing from the acceptable technique of universe government. But these Lenendecks, especially the primary order, are the most able and versatile of all the local universe administrators. In executive ability, they are excelled only by Gabriel and his unrevealed associates.
The book even reveals as to why so little was done to stop the rebellion in the first place, with Christ Michael being given express guidance from his older brother Emmanuel, who is our union of days, counseling his brother to allow the rebellion to exhaust itself, located in 54.5.8. In addition, like any wayward son, Michael wanted both an opportunity for his cosmic family to choose their proverbial side in the rebellion, whilst at the same time to provide ample opportunities towards proffered rehabilitation, found in 35.9.10. Be rest assured, however, in 51.3.7,
that on Urantia, a majority of these earlier midway creatures went into rebellion with Caligastia and have, since the Pentecost, been interned.
These midway creatures that are best described as being semi-material, are often the origin of possession or ghost stories in the Urantia Book, and were one of the greatest groups of disloyal entities during the rebellion. Since then, Caligastia's successor is now Makaventa Melchizedek, who is our vice-regent planetary prince, located in 55.7.3. And when it comes to our one-system sovereign Lucifer, he was replaced with Lanaforge, located in 55.2.2. If you want to get technical, we actually have the honor of having Christ Michael as our planetary prince, due to our planet being his final bestowal planet. But at such time, given his duties as our universe sovereign, has other obligations at this time, which is why we have Makaventa holding down the proverbial fort. This end result partially terminated the 200,000-year spiritual ban due to the Lucifer rebellion, located in 56.5, and was a major win for the Gabriel versus Lucifer celestial case, located in 54.4.8. Thank you again for watching today's video, your continued support, and I'll see you on the next video.